Since the earliest days, humankind has filled its landscapes with tales of hidden beings, creatures seen fleetingly at dusk or encountered unexpectedly along quiet roads. Their origins and intentions remain mysterious, often unexplained. Tonight we explore one such story from a quiet lane near Horbury Bridge in West Yorkshire, a tale where folklore stepped unsettlingly into reality. This is Jenkin Lane, an ordinary road today and much the same in the mid-19th century, apart from all the new houses, of course. Yet it was here on an unremarkable evening in the 1860s that a young woman named Grace Taylor had an encounter that would haunt her for the rest of her life. Grace was newly married to Sabine Baring-Gould, a curate who would later become famous for his extensive documentation of myths and folklore. Although Grace herself had little personal interest in her husband's passion, their evenings were filled with tales of spirits, sprites, and mysterious beings of the English countryside. Perhaps these stories drew attention from the very creatures they described. One evening, as twilight settled over Jenkin Lane, Grace decided to take a quiet stroll alone. Approaching a familiar hedgerow, she noticed something unusual perched on top of the foliage. Initially mistaking it for a bird or a stone, Grace moved closer, and it was then that the shape suddenly moved, sitting upright, turning deliberately to face her. Before her sat a tiny figure, no taller than 2 feet, dressed entirely in close-fitting green. This being gazed at Grace with an unnerving intensity. As she stood frozen in shock, the figure began twisting its small face into grotesque, mocking expressions, contorted features that seemed both intelligent and malevolent. Terrified, Grace turned and fled down the lane, never forgetting the experience. Why had this so-called short fellow, as Grace later named it, chosen to reveal itself to her in such a disturbing way? Well, Sabine Baring-Gould was fascinated but troubled by his wife's encounter. English folklore frequently mentions solitary green-clad figures, field sprites, tricksters, and malevolent beings. Had Grace encountered such a sprite, angered perhaps by the encroachment of the modern world and industry and organised religion into its ancient domain, or had Sabine's scholarly pursuits somehow drawn this thing into their lives, with Grace merely serving as a convenient messenger? Introducing the Eerie's Vault Patreon page, a treasure trove of research notes, newspaper and magazine clippings, exclusive on-location video content, early access to public videos, and access to the Eerie Isles interactive Google map with countless sighting and encounter locations for you to peruse at your leisure. This will be updated each time a new video is released and will become one of the most comprehensive encounters maps in the world. With membership options from as little as £1 per month, what are you waiting for? Head over to the vault. Another possibility exists. Grace's encounter could have been completely random. A solitary spirit amusing itself by frightening a passing stranger. But the intensity of the event, Grace's unwavering belief in its reality, and Sabine's careful documentation do suggest it's probably otherwise. Grace's unsettling encounter with the short fellow on Jenkin Lane was not as isolated as you might imagine. Across the globe and through the ages, others have reported almost identical experiences. Small, humanoid beings appearing without warning, clad in green or earthy colours, often showing bizarre and unsettling behaviour. In Ireland, of course, similar encounters with diminutive beings dressed entirely in green have long been documented. One notable case comes from County Donegal in the early 20th century. A young woman crossing a field near dusk encountered a figure just about 2 feet tall, wearing a suit of deep green. Like Grace's experience, this being then silently stared, twisting its features into strange, mocking grimaces until the terrified witness fled. Across the Atlantic, in the rural regions of Newfoundland, Canada, locals frequently told of fairy-like creatures known as little people who wore tight-fitting, single-coloured clothing. In 1939, near Bay Roberts, a local man named John Keogh encountered a tiny figure dressed completely in green, perched on a rock. It stared at him coldly, with its face twisting oddly. Frightened, Keogh turned and ran, haunted for years by that memory. Even further afield in Hokkaido, Japan, folklore speaks of the Koropokuru, small humanoid beings who dwell among plants, often clad in natural colours, appearing suddenly to startled travellers. A documented report from the late 19th century tells of a fisherman who encountered a tiny man no taller than his knee. The being silently regarded him with a disturbingly human expression, contorting its face in an unsettlingly mocking manner before disappearing among the reeds. Similar experiences are found in the indigenous lore of the Cherokee people of North America, whose traditions speak of the Yunwi-Tsuntsi, the little people, known to appear suddenly on secluded paths, often in forested areas, making strange faces or gestures to intimidate or perhaps test those that they encounter. What, if anything, connects all these disparate accounts, separated by continents and centuries? One thing is their remarkable consistency. Small stature, distinctively singular coloured clothing, disturbing facial expressions designed seemingly to frighten or unsettle rather than physically harm. Were these beings simply mischievous, malicious, or perhaps serving a purpose that we don't yet understand?